What's going on, guys? Mackenzie Long here. So apparently Patrick Bet-David is selling PHP to Integrity Marketing Group. This should be pretty interesting. So according to this article, Integrity Marketing Group is acquiring PHP. So it sounds like Patrick Bet-David is getting out of the mix quite a bit, acquiring, basically selling it to Integrity Marketing Group. So this is really fascinating to me because FFL, Family First Life, also just sold over to Integrity Marketing Group. So that one made more sense to me because FFL is really much more of a lead generation company that sells those leads to insurance individuals who then basically go out and make money off of the leads, whereas PHP's business model is very different than that. So I'm surprised to see that they are both being acquired into the Integrity Marketing Group. And if you watched my other video, the president of WFG, Tom Dempsey, also just went over to Integrity as well. So there's definitely something going on there, something that we're going to need to pay attention to because this is going to get pretty interesting. Now, as far as PHP being acquired into Integrity Marketing Group, that kind of says a couple things to me, and I'm going to give my opinion on this, but this is not necessarily, I don't have the numbers behind it. I just have been in the industry a long time. I've seen a lot of stuff and I know a lot of people in the industry, so this is some of the information that I've been able to gather. But generally, when you're selling a company, and this isn't always the case, but the vast majority of the time when you're selling a company, it's generally when it's not doing that well. Because if the company's doing really, really well, then, and you're making tons of money, then you're generally not looking at selling it. But there are a couple things that I've noticed that have happened over the last couple years with PHP specifically that I think lead to the indication that this was probably coming, or that Patrick in some instance wants to get out, or maybe too many people have gotten into the ownership of PHP that they needed to do something with that. Anyway, I'll give you my opinions about it, and I think it's really wrapped up in 4 bullet points. Can probably explain this the best, and these are just my thoughts behind it. And really, before we even get into that, I just want to make sure that it's noted that in the insurance and in the financial services industry, these companies pop up and die all the time. It seems like every year there's a couple new ones that come out. I don't know why they all decide to start with P, but they seem to do that. And they last a couple years and then they kind of fade away or they get bought by another company. And it just seems to be what happens all the time. And so you're constantly seeing this, if you've been around this industry as long as I have, that they're just popping up all the time and they disappear almost as quickly as they pop up. And that just seems to be the routine. And I think it's also part of the challenge with the industry, because if you happen to get recruited by one of these newer companies that hasn't been around that long, your name, you have to attach yourself to different names over and over again. And so even though it's the same industry, you're going to look like you worked with 3 or 4 or 5 different companies as they change. And if you don't like the way they're doing things, you move to another company or you get recruited to another company. And I think that's just a bad look for anybody, especially if you're in the team building or the agency building aspect that most of these companies are, because every time you move to a new company, you lose people in that transition. And I don't know why that's the case. It just seems to be how it works. So for longevity purposes, the more you move around, the less likely it is that you're actually going to build and retain a strong agency, because you're having to change and adapt and do all these other things. It's so much energy to do that it often doesn't work very well. So let's get into some of the ideas of why I think this is happening and maybe some of the future of what Patrick Bet-David is planning on doing. And so first and foremost, I want to talk a little bit about some things that have been going on with PHP that I've just noticed from the outside and some conversations that I've had. So my thoughts on this, again, down to really 4 bullet points. The first one is going to be just something that I've noticed for people who have worked at PHP or still work at PHP over time. Basically what has to happen, and this goes to those people who think PHP is a scam as well, just so you understand, you have to get affiliated with a company to be able to sell their products and services. And one of the companies that comes to mind is Nationwide. And they used to have an affiliation with Nationwide. They no longer do. And usually the reason why that happens is because you either don't have enough sales or your sales are not staying on the books, meaning they're charging back, meaning that they sell it to a client, but they don't keep it long enough for that insurance company to recoup their money, because there's a lot of costs that go into getting an insurance policy started, that once it's maintained, they are able to recoup their dollars after that. So that's generally what happens, and I know they lost their affiliation with Nationwide. But to give you an idea, especially to talk to those people who say that these companies are scams, Nationwide has to vet a company before they allow that company to sell their products and services, meaning Nationwide has to approve of it. You can't just get an insurance license and decide you want to sell a bunch of different companies' policies. It doesn't work that way. You have to get affiliated with some company, either direct to Nationwide if you want to sell just one product, or to a company like PHP or WFG or FFL or PFA or whatever all the different companies are. You have to get affiliated with them, and they have the affiliation with those companies that you can get approved with. Now, with that being said, there are certain standards and guidelines that have to be kept for them to want to continue letting that company offer their products and services. That's usually going to be volume of sales, how many policies are actually being sold, and number two is the persistency of those policies. Are those policies actually staying on the books long enough? And in both cases, it was probably an issue for PHP. And if you know anything about life insurance companies, their reputation and their brand is extremely important to them, and that's why they've been around for hundreds of years most of the time, because they've been able to keep that reputation and that brand. Because when you're talking about life insurance specifically, it's not something tangible. So if you can't trust the company that you're purchasing it from, I think that makes it really tough. So they're really strong on their brand and their reputation and the people that they allow to sell those products and services. So to be affiliated with a company like Nationwide or Lincoln or Fidelity or whoever it is that they're working with, that's really important, A, for the company who's selling those products, but also for the company who's offering those products through that marketing firm. And the reason why I say this is because that obviously proves legitimacy for what they're doing. Even if they lost their affiliation with Nationwide, they have other insurance groups that have vetted them out that are allowing them to sell those products and policies. They have other companies that have vetted them that allow them to sell those products and services. So if they're having any issues with that, I know they don't offer a lot of different companies, but they have a couple companies that they're able to offer. I think one of their main one is National Life, same with FFL. And again, the reason why I bring that up is there may have been some challenges or some complications there where selling to Integrity Group, Integrity Marketing Group, allows them to have a bigger pool of people. And maybe if Integrity already has affiliations with some of these companies, it gives them the opportunity to have more companies on their platform. So it could actually be a good move for them. And number 2 point is that the pandemic was pretty tough on the industry, and it was kind of strange because the sales went up, the amount of money that people were making went up, but what didn't go up really was the recruiting and the building aspect of it. It stayed pretty much the same, or I think recruiting went up, but retention kind of went down, so it's kind of hand in foot, like they go together, right? So the challenge was people who came in pre-pandemic and very recently to pre-pandemic, their entire life changed on the way that they do business, and they had to learn an entirely new way to do that. And you put that on somebody who's already brand new, who is already part-time, that's really tough. The people who shined really well was those who came in the pandemic era, where their first couple appointments, all their trainings, everything they were doing was 100% online. Those people seem to do really well. I've seen some of these guys within 2 or 3 years over $1 million a year, which is almost unheard of. It used to take 10, 15 years in our industry to do that, and people are doing that in a couple years now. And so as we go back, it's going to be interesting to see what happens as we actually start doing live meetings and those kinds of things as well. But I wonder if this was a challenge with PHP, because obviously they're a newer company, so they probably had some challenges with a lot of those things and being able to adapt into an environment being all online, and that might have stunted some of their growth. So that might have helped with the encouragement of possibly doing something as an acquisition. Also, with understanding what's coming up over the next couple of years, it could have just been perfect timing. The perfect storm kind of hit. They had a good opportunity and it was time to get out. And number 3 point that I would just want to bring up just for something that I noticed was that Patrick seemed to be selling parts of the company or allowing investors to come in. I remember Manny Pacquiao was one of them, where they would basically buy a portion of the company, or they had some investment in the companies. I'm assuming they were giving money and then getting a portion of the company in return for that. And he had done this multiple times. So he was basically fundraising. And usually when you do it in that kind of a way, at least with our industry, I don't think that's necessarily a good idea. So I'm wondering what kind of happened with that, if maybe Integrity is coming in and paying those guys out, or maybe they're keeping them as part of that acquisition. I don't know. I would imagine they would probably want it to be free and clear. So maybe there were some challenges with paying those people back. And so Integrity is stepping in and helping take care of some of those things. Because I always thought that was kind of interesting, especially when the agents would approach you, because they're big on recruiting. So I would get approached oftentimes. They say, oh, well, Manny Pacquiao invested in the company and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, what do you think that what does that do to your ownership? Because that's one of the things they always try to preach is, well, you have ownership, you have this, you own part of the company. Okay, that's great, but they don't have anything in writing on what that actually is. And if Manny Pacquiao just took ownership of some, doesn't that mean I would have less ownership? So it's really interesting. I would be really fascinated to learn what was going on there and what happened to those people who had ownership in the company as it moves over to Integrity. It sounds like Integrity has some pretty deep pockets, so I'm sure they were able to figure that out. And number 4 is, I think Patrick Bet-David is probably just at that point in his career with everything that's going on with Valuetainment and everything else that he's doing in the public eye and on social media. I wonder if he's just at a point where that makes more sense for him. And so the rumor going around, if you guys don't know this, he was actually with World Financial Group before. That's how he learned the system. He ended up copying that system and starting PHP. So the reason why, from my understanding, at least of the rumors that I've heard, was that he left at WFG because he wanted to be able to charge to go around and do all of his speaking gigs. And when you're inside of an agency, you don't really do that because your idea is to grow the entire company. And so generally what they do is they would have a pool. I know WFG does this specifically. They have a overriding pool where basically once you become a broker, you override the whole company. So as you go around and you speak to other agency owners, other groups inside of WFG, your compensation is that as the company grows, you're in those other bonus pools, which means you make more money. So you're not charging them specifically to come in and talk to their guys. It's kind of a collective thing for the company to do better. And from what I understand, that was one of the reasons why he left WFG. There were probably many other reasons as well. But so when he did that and started PHP, now with Valuetainment and everything going on, and now he gets paid to go all over the world and speak, I wonder if that's just a better fit for him and where he wants to go. And the reason why I bring that up is maybe that was Patrick's goal from the beginning. Maybe his idea, and maybe he didn't even know this, it wasn't a realized goal, but maybe he just wanted to do more of the speaking aspect of it. So when he started PHP, he found Valuetainment through that. And this is what most business owners do, by the way. They start a business, they start something that they know how to do, then they find other cool things that they like to do, they start working on those things to add other sources of income, and then they find out which ones they really like, which ones they don't. Maybe they sell off the other companies that they don't like as much. So maybe that's what's happening with PHP, and I don't know how much involvement he's still going to have with that. Probably quite a bit in the beginning. They probably have a tiered structure for him to kind of slowly get out of that, lift up some other leaders to be able to run it. So that'll be kind of interesting as well, but that would partially be my guess. He's probably getting paid a ton to go out and do speaking events and to do motivation stuff and talk in the industry, and he's gotten into all different areas of the world. So he's kind of become a public figure to be able to go and do any of that stuff that he wants to do as well. So that might be part of the reason, or his thought process behind it, is letting go of the PHP side, letting that agency kind of be run by somebody else now. Integrity seems, like I mentioned earlier, to have some pretty big pockets, so apparently they can handle it. They know these things. So he's probably going to be moving more into that social media aspect where potentially he makes a lot more money and has a lot less responsibilities, because running an agency takes a lot of work. It's not easy to build people, especially you take somebody like Patrick or a lot of the people in the industry who come from not having a whole lot, and there's plenty of people who come into the industry as doctors and already millionaires, and you see a lot of that stuff too, but a lot of them are they're not necessarily entrepreneurs, and they're built into being entrepreneurs and business owners. That takes time and effort and a big investment in people. And so maybe he wants to free up some of that time to be able to do what he wants to do on the social media aspect. So that would be at least one of the other factors that are probably going on in that. And there's probably quite a few more as well that I wouldn't obviously know. I'm not inside of Patrick Bet-David's head. That are going on there as well. But anyway, just to give you kind of an update, so PHP is going to be moving or has been acquired by Integrity Marketing Group. So what they're going to do with the name and the brand and all of that stuff, I don't know. I imagine they'll still retain it, but it'll be interesting because there's a very unique dynamic when you have the corporate world and you have the entrepreneurial world of a company like PHP, and those two trying to come together. It's a very difficult situation to be able to do because you can't manage people in an entrepreneurial venture the same way you can inside of a company where they have designated hours and times and hourly pay versus an entrepreneur. Very, very different on the way that that's handled, but it could be good for the people who stay with PHP if it opens up other avenues and resources for them. Since Integrity is so big, they might be able to bring in more products and services. This might also be part of something that has to happen, very similar to the way that Transamerica and Aegon purchased WFG, so that way they could offer other products and services. That way they could actually bring in the broker dealer and offer the financial side of it, the securities products too. So maybe they're doing something like that, which could be pretty fascinating as well. We'll see how it turns out, but I'm really interested to see what they're gonna do with it. So don't forget also to smash that like button and also hit the subscribe as well. And we have new videos coming out every single day at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So don't forget to hit the little bell so you can stay in contact with us as well. And don't forget, we're also doing our $50,000 giveaway for financial literacy. So if it's something that you're interested in, you're probably in the industry if you're watching this video, so it's probably not as specific for you. But if you are with PHP, maybe you're thinking of moving to another company, or you're looking for an agency, or maybe you just want to get your financial literacy in line, that's perfectly fine. What we are doing is we're giving away over $50,000 in financial literacy resources. That's something that my agency and my team is doing. It's not a YouTube thing, it's not a social media thing. So if you're interested in that, there's a MailChimp link down below that you can click on. It does ask you for some information so that we can reach out to you. We'll send you an email. We'll try to contact you that way first. We can't get a hold of you that way. We will we'll actually call you so we can get a hold of you and send out some of these resources. We'd love to be able to do that as well if you're not in the industry and you would like some of that. So anyway, hope this was helpful for you. And as always, have a great day. I'll catch you later. Bye.